I remember
Sorry,
being
no one wants to
so
sleep with you.
pro-life in high school because I nobody tempted me with losing my virginity, so that was an easy thing to claim.
Yeah, same.
It's like I'm straight edge because nobody ever offered me drugs or alcohol.
Right?
I
Yeah.
was.
Easy to wonder how could you if never had the opportunity pass through. I mean it, and then as soon as we all did, we all failed hard.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I, the one with the dynamic and clear voice that sounds straight off a radio, am Casey.
Yeah, and I'm Sam, and I'm basically dying over here. So I've had a cold. God, I'm already starting to cough. This is embarrassing. If I do any laughing at all during this, I don't even know why we're doing an intro. If I laugh at all during this, I'm going to just have to mute my mic, cough for about 5 minutes. I've had this thing where, God, I mean, it's hard to, I think it's been 5 or 6 days and I feel worse.
Oh my God, you've had it for 6 days?
Yeah, I can't shake this. And it's not COVID. So, okay, what day is today? Today, we're recording this on a Monday. All right, for tomorrow's release. So I started getting like the sniffles or whatever on Wednesday. And then I think it was on Thursday. I took an at-home COVID test, came up negative, but I felt like okay. Like I felt a little bit worse, but then Friday I felt fine. Like no, I was like, oh, I guess it was just like, I don't know, that kind of made its way through my body pretty quick, and I felt okay. And then I woke up on Saturday feeling like complete shit. So I scheduled like a COVID test at like an urgent care, not flu, not COVID, and now it's Monday. And I still feel terrible. Like I still had a fever as of this evening, not a high one, but it's just like, God, I can't shake this stupid thing.
Do you think that maybe like your liver has distilled Keystone Light down into like a toxic sludge and now it's dumping it into your body to spite you?
It's possible that it's doing that with all the Miller Lite that I drink, but I haven't dipped down so low as to hit Keystone. What's the natty light? That's like the real, like you've plummeted into an abyss. You've had like the one time in my life I had natty light. Have you ever had that shit?
No, I avoid beer altogether.
That's right. But the one time in my life I had natty light, maybe I've already shared this story. I don't know. I was really drunk, like very, very drunk. It was on a family vacation. I was hanging out with my brothers-in-law, sitting outside at the beach, just drinking, and that's all that was left. And I took 2 sips and was like, I couldn't drink it at all, no matter how drunk I was. I was like, I can't even get this down. I'm just gonna go to bed. Why am I doing this to myself?
Dude, so my buddy Tim, I went to the little Christian school with him and stuff, and great dude, love that dude, legendary cheapskate. Like he was the guy that would like total up how much gas you owed him for taking a ride to the concert or whatever.
Oh yeah, and I love those people.
When I moved back to Michigan after college, I hung out with him, a decent amount, and like he shared an apartment with my buddy Jesse, who you heard on Fellowship Friday. So Tim would like refuse to pay for AC. So Michigan is not like the hottest place on earth, but it's humid as balls. And so like he'd invite me over. He'd be like, oh, we're playing video games. Come on over. So I'd go over there and we're in this little apartment. He's got the AC turned off and it's like 84 degrees in the apartment. And he would go and find the cheapest beer that he could find. It was like all about volume, right? So he would always have a different one, it seemed like, when I went over there, and they were like ones I had never heard of. These are like,
he's doing the math. He's like ounces divided by ABV price.
Like, he for sure is. And he like, it's like when you go to Dollar General and they have like soda that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
It's like it's separating in the bottle.
Yeah. You know how like when you go to the grocery store, it tells you like, you're looking at two different, yeah, I don't know, pastas, right? And it's like it tells you the cost, and then in the little bottom left, it's like price per pound or something like that. And so that way you can like not have to do the math yourself. They need to start doing that at liquor stores, right?
Yeah.
Like come up with some metric, right? That includes like a bang for your buck metric when it comes to ABV, ounces, cost, and just advertise it right there in the bottom left hand corner of where the price is.
Yeah, like I like a nice bottle of tequila or whiskey or whatever, but sometimes you've got a destination in mind and you don't really care how you get there.
Oh yeah.
That's where it comes in,
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim would have no name beer. He would drink it warm in his 84-degree living
Ugh.
room. And I would just like sit there, my chubby self in my work polo or whatever, and sweat until finally I'm like, I gotta go home, dude. I can't do this anymore.
That is so funny.
So, I told you I had a story. This happened like a couple hours ago, and it's
fresh
the
off the
grossest
press
thing that's happened in a while. And I may have to get a divorce, and it's not my wife's fault, but it is what it is at this point. It's reality.
Did you find out that the that Snapchat picture going around actually was her? She did
destroy the RV. Yeah. Separate story for those of you who aren't aware. There's a huge account on
Shithead
Instagram.
Steve, right?
Yeah. And like I follow, like everybody I know follows him. I don't know. They shared a picture of my wife. They like took a picture from her Instagram or something and shared it with the caption underneath, "Just blew up the bathroom at Arby's, LMFAO," which she did not type. I don't know. Anyways, so it's like unseasonably warm here. Like it was 70 degrees yesterday.
Oh my God, I would kill for that right now.
It's pretty nice. We've been out doing like a whole bunch of bird hunting. And so you just walk for miles in these fields and stuff. And like I stopped checking the dogs for ticks like 2 months ago. But for some reason, I guess because it's so warm, there's ticks around. It's awful.
So they come back from hibernation? That's weird.
I know. I guess so. I'd never seen it before. But yeah, I was looking at Phoebe today. I was like scratching her neck and stuff. And I'm like, what is that? Is that like a skin tab? And it's like a full tick, like fully inflated little gray raisin.
Ugh.
And she had 2 of them on her. So I picked them off. April's down in her craft room. And so like I take them down there on a folded up napkin. I like fold it up around and I'm like, hey, I got a present for you. As I hand it to her and she opens it, it's like one of those things where it takes you a second to realize what you're looking at. And she's like, oh, gross. So she gives them back. One of them was smashed. The other one was still like inflated. It's like you want to make sure it's dead before you dispose of it. So she's standing there talking to me like at my left shoulder. And I'm like holding this paper towel with these ticks in it. And I'm squeezing the one of them to like pop it and kill it. Right. And it bursts and she screams and like this, like that, that blood that comes out of a tick. It's like black, it shot up and hit her like in the eye.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was like in her eye, like smeared all over her eyebrow. It was so disgusting. It's like in a full scale panic, like, get it out.
Like instantly have to run to the eye wash station. You don't have one of those at your house?
I do have an overabundance of eye drops since I got my eyes lasered.
Oh yeah. In case they dried out. If you like woke up and they were actually stuck to your eyes.
I flushed her whole face.
What if when you got your eyes lasered, they like roasted your tear ducts by accident?
Well, that's one of the things, like when you go in for the consultation, they have to like go over all of the possible negative things that can happen.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, makes you very nervous. Because like one of the things that they talk about is they're like, it's a small number of patients, but some patients experience dry eye, after the surgery. And for some people, it's a chronic lifelong condition after the surgery. I'm like,
Cool. Great.
I kind of want that.
All right. When do we get started? Dude, I mean, I still remember I was 13 years old and I had broken my arm, and it was like a compound fracture. So like the bones popped through. And so I'm like in the ER and they have to like put me under for surgery. And I still remember, like, despite like sitting there with a dangly arm, barely paying attention to what's going on, they run through like the risks of anesthesia. And I was like, I'm dead. Like, I'm going to die here today. I thought this broken arm was the worst part of the day, but it's going to be that I'm dead that makes it the worst part of the day.
That is crazy though, that like sometimes, once in a while, somebody just doesn't come back from anesthesia.
Yeah, I know. I have a friend who's an anesthetist, and she'll hear this because she listens. But I hear about her job and some of the stuff that she has to deal with. You're managing people anesthesia, like they're asleep and you have to, it's not like you just like, all right, let's flip the switch and then we just wake them up when it's done. Like, it's a constant monitoring of vitals and keeping everything. It's just, I obviously sound like an idiot talking about it, and she's probably like, can you stop making my job sound really dumb? But it sounds so stressful. And just knowing that, obviously, like the surgeon, there's a lot that goes along with cutting somebody open and making sure they don't die that way. But I feel like the anesthesia is probably even a bigger risk when you're comparing it to like your regular run-of-the-mill surgeries that are done on a pretty regular basis, like your outpatient surgeries and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. That would be a heck of a way to go.
Probably wouldn't actually be that bad. That's like probably the best way you could possibly do.
Just to turn out the lights while they're doing your removing your gallbladder.
Yeah. I mean, you fall asleep and you don't wake up. That's like the dream for most. Usually you want that to come later in life, but
I feel like I want to die in a way that is really embarrassing for my parents to explain at the funeral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Prolab Status.
I was gonna say like a belt around my neck.
Autoerotic asphyxiation.
That would be the worst. It's not funny.
It's not, but it's funny.
The thought of my parents having to explain it at the funeral, it's kind of funny.
That's like there's that Robin Williams movie called World's Greatest Dad. Have I talked about that on the podcast?
I remember that movie. That's like the plot of that movie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's super dark, but it's basically like Robin Williams is like a nice guy, and his kid is a piece of shit, absolute trash kid through and through. They offer no redemptive arc. Like the point isn't, the whole point is for him to be trash, and that's how he died. Like, so the premise of the film is Robin Williams finds his son dead after he tries autoerotic asphyxiation. So he comes up with like a story about his son just being troubled and insecure. And of course, now this kid dies and everyone in the school is like, oh, we were like best friends, but everyone actually hated him. And the whole movie just builds up around like this pretending this kid was great. And Robin Williams' character is struggling through the fact that his kid was a piece of shit that died jerking off. And it's not laugh out loud funny, like, don't get me wrong, it's a dark comedy and it's fantastic. It's a really good movie. And if you're missing Robin Williams, it's not one of his feel good movies. It's no Mrs. Doubtfire, but it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I still haven't ever seen Mrs. Doubtfire.
What the fuck?
There's a lot of troubling themes in it. There's like, cross-dressing, divorce. There's a lot of reasons why I couldn't watch it.
Did that come up when that movie came? I remember when the movie came out and I wanted to see it.
Did. Cross-dressing couldn't come.
Okay. Well, maybe
that's more of a modern reason why parents wouldn't let their kids watch it in those circles.
Yeah, I don't like that a man's dressing up as a woman. Yeah,
I think there was
that's
like a lot of that stuff though that was it's like I don't know that a lot of parents really had that strong of feelings one way or another about certain movies and stuff, but it was like that was the messaging they were getting from whatever Focus on the Family or whoever was putting it out at the time, and it was like, let's just not risk it. Maybe it's fine,
yeah,
maybe
it's
it's not.
risky. It's very risky. It might permanently damage our children if we expose them to one movie that has some inappropriate humor. Dude, there was I feel like that era, well, I guess the 90s, there was like this, maybe I'm just out of the loop, I don't know, but that it was like family movies that were like PG-13 or like on that side of things, right? There was a little bit more of an edge to them. Now family movies are very like kid oriented and they might throw in some jokes for the adults, but like with I'm thinking like Mrs. Doubtfire, Home Alone. Like I watched Home Alone with my kids just recently, and they're 6 and 4, and it's like, oh, this is uh, a lot of that's going over their head. The slapstick humor is a little much, but like then you like when Marv steps on the nail going up the stairs and you see it go into his foot and stuff like that. I'm like, I remember being
Oh,
young and just laughing so hard at that movie when he steps on the ornaments and gets hit in the face with an iron or gets their heads blowtorched. Like you're laughing at all of it, and it's just funny to watch it with your kids because they're not used to movies like that. Their movies are animated and loud and flashy and colorful and obnoxious, really. So to like go back and watch some of these like older movies that we grew up with, it's just like there's what are we watching? They did like it, but they weren't like, can we watch it again? We haven't watched it a second time. It didn't stick.
yeah, I feel like the amount of stimulus in the movies and TV shows for kids nowadays is
Oh my
it's
god,
like a shocking amount.
it is too much. It's like I tried putting on Rugrats for my kids not too long ago, and it was like even watching it myself, I'm like, oh, this is like a quiet show, not filled with constant sounds and dialogue. And my kids got bored with it so fast. We like lived on this shit when we were, and it's not flashy and obnoxious enough.
Do you need like an honest reviews of kids watching like children's content from the 80s and 90s? Just be like, God, very quiet, kind of boring, needs more farts.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that Home Alone was a big one at our house.
Oh yeah.
I feel like every year we watched Christmas Vacation.
We love that movie. Jill was like, we should watch that with the kids. I was like, I feel like that might be a little bit much,
That might
but
be a bit much.
I there's a little bit more. It's honestly like as much as it might be a little much content wise for a 6 and a 4 year old. It the narrative arc of that isn't as much for kids. Like they're just not going to follow along. Like at least with Home Alone, it's like these guys are trying to break into the house and he's fighting them off. That's like that's something that they can follow. But like Christmas Vacation is just I don't think they'd follow it or care.
No, that one's it's a little older. Or you'd just be like elbowing them on the couch. It's like, you know how you like the idea of hanging out with your cousins, but you don't actually like it in practice.
Yeah. Jokes
That
about
one is
bonuses
good.
at work. Like, oh, that's funny for a 6 year old.
Yeah.
Putting in a pool, managing family stress. They get it.
Dude, what was some other like Christmas movies that you guys loved?
Dude, I feel
I
like
mean, all the Clay ones.
I didn't watch the only ones that come to mind. The only one that really comes to mind was is Home Alone. I mean, Elf, of course, was like everyone's, but that's older than I think it is. But it wasn't when I was a kid. But the movie's got to be like almost 20 years old.
It was got to be like early 2000s.
Yeah,
That one was a
but
killer. Dude, what about Jingle All the Way?
I didn't watch it.
No, with Arnold and Sinbad?
No, and I didn't watch like I don't really recall watching the Santa Claus as a kid.
Yeah, that's like everything else Tim Allen does. It's like forgettable.
Yeah, my kids have gotten into. They watched that a few times so far.
Yeah, I think we really liked all the classic ones like Rudolph and Santa Claus is coming to town and
Oh yeah,
whatnot.
like the stop animation ones, dude. You can't
Yeah.
watch Rudolph anymore. If you go back and watch Rudolph, look, I get that like everyone gets all bent out of shape because they're canceling all the old programs, blah blah blah. Cancel culture, everyone wants to freak out about it, but it is wild to go back and watch Rudolph because it's literally just like you're weird, you're different, nobody likes you, get the fuck out of here. And then it's just like let's try to hide who you really are. And then oh, actually, you're this comes in handy. Your nose is bright, and we need you now. And then everyone's like, oh, cool, we're good with this guy now. But it literally just is a movie of them like just shitting on him. And then the dad is just like, why couldn't I have a normal son? Fuck this kid. And you're like, this is really, really dark.
Well, I feel like that was always it's like the perception of what it was about hasn't changed. It's like he was bullied, and then he, learned to be himself, and people saw it and changed their minds and came around and stuff like that. It just might be is it just that it's like harsh?
I think it just is dated as all. It's like when you watch All in the Family. It's like, look, we know what you were doing. We get what the lesson was. And it worked then. And now it's dated. And people don't want to watch that in the same way that they did in the 70s. It's like, I feel like it's similar to that. Where you're like, we know what you're doing. It just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I do wish Rudolph would have laid off the racial slurs.
Yeah, it
Cuts
was a
into
lot.
his hero's journey.
Yeah,
Sure.
oh, certainly. I mean, it's like when you find out Mel Gibson hated Jews, you're just like, man, you were our guy. You were. I guess Christians still kind of like him despite the Jew hating, but
Oh man, once in a while, like there's been a couple of celebrities that just like a phone call or something like that got recorded came out. Like Alec Baldwin had one of those.
oh
Remember
yeah.
that where he's just like laying into his daughter and calling her fat and stuff.
And look where it got him.
Look where
Killed
he got
somebody
him.
on set. That's where that leads.
Yeah, I could have told you so.
Yeah.
I guess he's like he's really like pushing the idea that he didn't pull the trigger on the gun.
Which is like, why? It feels like you probably did. Like, I don't really, who buys that? And it's fine. Like, aren't you supposed to pull the trigger? It's a blank. That's what makes the gun go off and fire and look like it's firing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It must be like part of his, prerequisite for his like legal defense down the road is all I can think. But like, there's no way that that's the case. Like when you look at how one of those guns functions, like, I think what he's claiming is like, well, I pulled the hammer back and then let go of it and it snapped shut. But that's not how those guns work. They have like, it's like a geared system almost where they have like 4 or 5 stops along the way. It's like the hammer can't just fall unless the trigger's depressed or something like that.
I don't even know why I know he was like a producer. I know there's a lot that goes into that, I don't know, safety protocol violations, maybe. But as far as like him being the guy on set who in the scene is supposed to fire the gun, like, I don't know why that's necessarily that's on him. I mean, if he had something to do with, if he had something to do with the safety protocol violations as a producer of the film, like that's going to come up. But as far as pulling the trigger or not pulling the trigger seems irrelevant.
Yeah, like I don't particularly love Alec Baldwin, but like I
It's
feel
not one of my
awful
favorites
for him. I mean, I don't think he's to blame for what happened at all. Like whoever brought live ammunition onto that set is the person to blame. Like why was that ever there in the first place?
I know. It doesn't make any sense.
It
really
doesn't.
I don't understand how live ammunition ever makes its way a film set. It seems so weird.
Super dangerous. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like everything, everybody always is like looking for someone to put the blame on for some of the, when an accident happens or something like that. But I just, it's not him.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like there was some negligence. Like this had to do with like the strike. Apparently the person who was, I don't know, handling that type of shit on set, the weapons, the whatever, has had some issues in the past with safety violations or things going awry. And he was like, it's a cheaper option. So, budget cuts, shit like that. I don't know. Someone's definitely at fault for it. It might actually tie back to Alec Baldwin because, he's the producer of the film or one of the producers. So like if he's the one like that made the call and went with a guy who has historically violated safety protocols, it could come back to get him. And if that's the case, then that's on him. I'm not going to lose sleep over it, but that's why I was just saying like pulling the trigger to me doesn't seem like the issue there. The issue is something bigger than that.
It doesn't seem like a point worth even raising.
Yeah. So that's why it's weird that he's like, I didn't even pull the trigger. It's like, okay, nobody was having that conversation until you just awkwardly put it out there.
Right. It's like when OJ wrote that book that like, I didn't do it, but if I did.
Yeah.
Here's how I would have done it better. Like, I don't know what you were going for, but I know how it's landing.
Yeah. Dude, what an insane thing to do.
So, our guest this week is Jeremy Spring. And you probably know him from some of his music projects. If you ever listen to bands like Abandoned Kansas, Crusoe, or his new one is called Glass Age. He's a phenomenal musician that, has a pretty like extensive catalog. He's been in the music industry and specifically like the Christian music industry for, 20 years. I mean, a long time. I think Abandoned Kansas is on Goatee Records, which is Toby Mac's. Toby Mac. That's the correct pronunciation.
Okay.
But he's just a really interesting guy. Happens to live like 20 miles from my house, which we didn't know until we started talking. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, he books shows at venues that you go to.
Yep. Yeah, if you want to call them that around here. No, they're fun. But we talked a lot about his background, him coming up in the church and stuff, and how that changed over the years with touring and doing music and all of that kind of stuff. And he's just a very like grassroots kind of guy that had like just a really, just reasonable. And I think when it came down to it, and we started talking about how his faith looks today, he just had a little bit of a different perspective, I think, than what we've heard from other guests and stuff. And I thought it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. He did have a different perspective. It's, it's a piece with where he's at, even if where he's like the church that he's in, the kind of church that he's in doesn't define him or his beliefs necessarily, but finding a place there, in as far as music goes and kind of, one of the things we talked about is the influence musically that church has on kids. That's where a lot of kids realize that they like music. It gives kids at an early age the opportunity to play music in front of other people and realize that they love doing that. Outside of church, you kind of just have to like find people and get a band together and ask some people to watch you practice. Like church gives people an opportunity to get on stage and play before you might normally have that opportunity. So, he participates in that at his local congregation, and knowing that there are people who are as musically talented as him, trying to raise up the next generation to pursue their musical dreams is cool. I like, what he has to say about that.
Yeah. So his newest project is called Glass Age. If you listen to this, you should go check that out. It's pretty cool. And enjoy our conversation with Jeremy Spring. 'Tis the season to be jolly, and nothing makes me more jolly than a great cup of coffee. You know what I'm talking about?
I certainly do, Casey.
So my house this time of year, I turn the heat down at night because I like it to be like a frosty 66. And waking up in the morning, stepping out into the kitchen at 5:30, it's chilly.
You got your long underwear on. You got the flap open in the back, all unbuttoned with your little booty hanging out.
Rosy cheeks, 2 sets, top and bottom.
They look freshly spanked, but it's just getting sold.
My poor pets. Nothing wakes me up better than a cup of hot Captain Cecil's coffee. And, during the fall, I was really into the Knobsk blend. I just got a new shipment in, and I gotta say, the limited edition holiday blend is fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, I gotta say it must be amateur hour in here because you talked about it being a frosty 66, and I set my thermostat to a frosty 62.
That's like a Siberian gulag.
It's cold. You wake up in the morning and you don't want to get out of bed, but you have to. Get your pot of coffee going, and of course, I'm drinking Captain Cecil's. Captain Cecil's donates 10% of all sales to various lighthouse preservation organizations across New England. It's one way for them to make sure that they remain with us for generations. And as a New Englander, that's super important. Lighthouses around here, big deal. They're landmarks. And I know you don't know anything about lighthouses because you don't have them. You just have windmills, the lighthouses of the Midwest.
Yeah, we have like grain elevators. Not quite as scenic, but same thing.
Yeah.
The holidays are right around the corner, and there's no better gift for the coffee lovers in your family than Captain Cecil's. And they're offering a special deal to our lovely listeners. From now until Christmas, you can go to CaptainCecils.com and enter the promo code GrowingUpChristian at checkout for 20% off your order. Now until Christmas, it's a deal you don't want to miss. So go to CaptainCecilsCoffee.com and enter the promo code GrowingUpChristian at checkout for 20% off your order. Happy holidays from me, from Sam, and from Captain Cecil's Coffee.
Hey, everybody, we're back with our guest, Jeremy Spring. Jeremy, how's it going, man?
I'm doing fine, man. How are you guys?
Yeah, man, we're doing good. I work in retail, so it's like Q4 for us, and I literally am like, it's like work, get home, kids, dinner, kids to bed. If we have a podcast, work after that. So it's the worst time of year for me. But
yeah, well, I have COVID.
Yes, Casey does.
Suck on that.
Win.
I tested positive on Monday. So, but I literally like almost no effect whatsoever. So I'm just kind of hanging around the house and working on projects for a week.
Casey's the proof text that people need to assume that COVID doesn't matter. So congratulations, Casey.
That's the message I'm trying to put out.
Yeah. Now, I got COVID back in the spring.
Oh, did you? How did it hit you?
It was like 8 or 9 days just on the couch or in bed, just doing a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, man, so you got hit hard.
It kicked my butt, man. It was like right when that new strain came. It was like April and May earlier this year. But I don't know. I know they sent my spit off and they were like, "You're a special specimen. Would you mind if we did some extra testing?" Like,
really?
I must have had a cool new strain, and it was fine then. After that, I mean, just a bunch of coughing and the loss of taste is the worst part. I'm sure everybody says that, but.
Oh yeah, I haven't got it. It's weird. I mean, some people lose taste, some people don't. But that sounds, it just sounds miserable. Even if I had no other symptoms, losing, I would rather feel like shitty for 6, 7, 8 days than lose my taste for like a month or 2 or 3. I mean, people lose it for a long time.
Yeah, it's like it was worse than just losing it. Stuff that should taste good tasted extra like puke.
Really?
Yeah, like, stuff you should enjoy and do enjoy tasted bad, and retraining your taste buds. Somebody said that, and I was like, I didn't train him the first time. We didn't do any run-throughs of what I like. Like, I like what I like, and now I don't. That's alarming, but it came back.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for a taste bud disruption. Like, maybe I'd lose a couple pounds out of this whole deal.
I did, man. I fit in some old shirts for sure.
Those old band
I tried to go back the other day and like put on some old band tees that I had stored away, and not good. Well, every T-shirt from like 2007 fits me like a sports bra now.
They're for your kids, dude. Now I don't know. They're like for pajamas for kids. I don't know.
It's like extra pathetic now too when you pull one out and your wife's like, "Did you listen to First to Last?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, I
It's
just
Skrillex,
like the
baby.
design."
Skrillex. That's just
Yeah.
it.
I remember when I had to like get rid of those shirts. When you
Those
you
all the
just
black shirts.
yeah, all the black shirts with the pastel colors on it, and you're like, that's a hard pill to swallow, to admit that you've just gone up a size in clothing. It's not. It sucks. I hated it. I was like, I can't. Even like my shirts all had like the holes in the armpits and shit, you know. And you're like, I'm still good. I'm still wearing these. And then you're like,
The thing about moving back here, I
Throwing 'em
keep
out.
finding my old band merch at the Goodwill and DAV.
Oh, for real?
Yeah,
that's funny, man.
they're good quality t-shirts. They're not.
They're
good.
holding up. They've had a few owners now.
I guess. I don't
Oh, as
know.
long as they didn't have to stretch around my bust,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh man. All right, Jeremy, I want to hear a little bit about your life, because I have a feeling it's you've been through some of the shit that everybody else has. But let's go ahead and hear a little bit about you, like where you grew up, how you grew up, shit like
I
that.
don't know what you guys cover on this thing. So I was born in Texas. My parents met at Arlington Baptist Bible College.
Yes, I don't know it.
Okay.
I just know it sounds exactly like what I think it is.
You know, King James version only. You know,
Everyone talks like Hank Hill.
swimming. You know, I don't know. I would think, you know, they both got a degree in piano.
Interesting. To do worship music?
No, like, well, I guess so. What is that? What we called it back then? Like, they were doing Southern gospel or doing like hymns. You know,
Yeah.
accompanying. You know, probably the only musician in the room, maybe an organ, but definitely not writing stuff or that kind of thing. But they were playing and accompanying in different big churches in Texas. I was born in Texas, and then we moved to Ohio. That's where I grew up and kind of got my, you know, like evangelical roots started.
Where in Ohio?
Middletown, Ohio, between Dayton and Cincinnati.
Okay.
Okay.
We had Skyline chili for lunch on Sunday. My mom's own like homemade recipe, but like South Western Ohio. Like my dad was a youth pastor, but we're talking like first ones in the building. You know, Sunday school, Sunday morning church, Sunday night church, Wednesday night Awana. You know,
Oh yeah.
like
Wanna kids.
Thursday night church basketball league. Like, you know, at the church a lot. So as far as, you know, related to this podcast, definitely grew up pastor's kid. We moved to Kansas when I was in 7th grade. My dad took a church here. His dad was dealing with some cancer. So that's, I think, kind of the basis of looking for a job here, but took a small church here in Wichita. Yeah, we went to a kind of a liberal arts school here in Wichita, Friends University. Got a more diverse experience there, and from there hit the road with a band, and like that opened my whole perspective up. So I guess that's the 10,000-foot view. But
Yeah. No,
Did
that
you
makes
did you go to Christian school like growing up, or were you secular school?
secular school.
Secular.
secular. Is this a secular song? That's a good question. The church that we moved to in Ohio had a big Christian school. And my parents, one of the boundaries they drew early was like, we're here enough. You'll go to public school. I think
Oh,
we
interesting.
also had good public schools. You know, I don't, who knows how that would have worked out. But yeah, I never went to Christian school. Relieved by that. That would have been loaded to be on church staff kid, you know, going to that school.
That would have been nuts. I mean, it's not an experience that people don't have, but I can't even like. I was homeschooled.
Free tuition or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, probably yeah. As your dad was working there, so I'm homeschooled, and then I'm like I was in the church as often as I could be because I was homeschooled. It was just like I needed any sort of interaction with people outside of my family.
For social, yeah.
With being a pastor, being there like for every service, youth group, Awana, like you said, church basketball league. And then if you had to go to school there, you literally never would have left there. You would have had like what, 3 nights at home, and then the rest
Right.
of your life would have been in that church.
Well, and you feel kind of, I think any pastor's kid kind of has this experience. I kind of check the kid at my church, pastor's kids now, but like you just feel like you run the show. There's a little bit of a backstage pass element.
Yeah.
The way you snag donuts, to the way you dip out of service, to the way, I don't know, whatever you're doing, like it's like nobody's gonna ask, and it's kind of a rock star mentality a little, or maybe that was a bad setup for me. I don't know.
Yeah. That's what got you wanting to perform.
We're
perhaps.
just used to like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. I don't know.
Regardless of who's watching.
Right.
Do you feel like you connected? It's like there's so many varying experiences as far as the way people connect to that. Is like, especially with pastors' kids, dude, because pastors' kids, like, I feel like they're it's an odd dynamic. There's like, they either like rebel and they are like kind of assholes about it. This isn't for me, or they're like, I'm gonna be just like my dad. Like, you don't really coast. I feel like with the pastors' kids that I've known is that
A roller coaster ride.
you,
Yeah.
you got to pick one or the other.
I didn't rebel. High school, college, the road, I got a little more experience. I think there's always been like an element where like I know I'm like my dad, but I don't want to deliver it the same.
Okay.
And so I ride that roller coaster, I think, internally, but I mean, I think most of my cliche rebel stuff is in there, but it wasn't right inside the church those years. I think it's come out later. I kind of sowed my wild oats later on, but the as far as the pastor's kid thing, I haven't totally. I I mean, I've gone through seasons of disillusionment. I mean, I don't know where y'all stand on this because, like I said, I haven't listened to the podcast a whole lot, but like Jesus continues to find me in my BS as far as dealing with the old stuff, the old wounds, the stuff that sounds alarming but isn't, stuff that we're, even just being a charismatic person who can sing and evoke emotion, like understanding the power of that. So my guard's up when I hear a good speaker or I hear a good worship leader. And so, um, but understanding that we can use our powers for good and or evil, just so relearning what that looks like as a 36-year-old man, not a kid in the church, what it looks like to think of my dad at that age, raising me, how he's trying to interpret that. Now I've got a son. So I think just a lot of ongoing conversation about that pastor's kid thing. I know all the cliches and a lot of them are true. They
Yeah.
are.
The pastor's kids that I grew up with, I'm still friends with. So one of my best friends was my pastor's kid, and all of them that I knew were pretty devout. I
Yeah.
don't think I knew any of that, like kicked out the way that people describe them and stuff.
That's some big stain. I think, yeah, I mean, I'm still on board. I think there's a lot of commitment piece that's taught from a pastor's family, I mean, unless they're corrupt. I mean, but people that are, for the most part, people that get into ministry are in it for the right reasons, at least in my experience. I think they get a bad rap, some of the stuff gets some a lot of the attention, but I don't know. Maybe you guys feel different about that.
It's interesting because when you think about it as far as local congregations go, there's probably a lot of truth. I guess you'd have to break down what the right reasons are, or what constitutes like good motivation, I guess.
That's true.
One of the things that comes up a lot in our sphere is that, and this is a concept that kind of like, it's a through line through anything. I don't care if you grew up in religion or not. It's like that intentions only go so far, right? Like you people with good intentions can do bad or harmful things. And I think one of the things we revisit a good bit is like a lot of people, millennials especially, even some like millennials and Gen Zers, right? They have these parents that a lot of them had conversion experiences when they were in their early 20s. Then they have a family and they want to raise them what they think is right. And they went from like this upbringing of I did they'll tell the stories like I did drugs when I was your age and I drank underage and I had sex and we need to like that wasn't good for me. And so then they like kind of just flip the whole thing on its head and they raise kids in the evangelical church. And then turns out that raising kids with some of the messages of the evangelical church from an early childhood is actually damaging
Yeah.
when you take it to an extreme degree. And when you wrap up so much of humanity's ills in sexuality and it goes awry, and we're seeing that as people are leaving the church in droves. So it's funny because I think most of us would say, like you did, that like no one in our experience was getting into it for the wrong reasons, even if what they did ultimately wasn't the best for us.
Yeah, they meant well, but I feel that intentions fall short. I think something so, growing up in the really evangelical, it was independent, but Southern feeling Baptist church tradition, a couple confusing messages where you're like, you're saved by grace. It has nothing to do with what you've done. But then
Mhm.
as soon as that prayer is done, it has everything to do with what you're currently doing and have done. And we're always going to talk about that. And so, um, juggling that with like in my, I grew up in a household where it was like truth and more of a intellectual approach to spirituality. The heart's deceitful, don't trust feelings type thing. So then here I am leaning super into feelings in my art and my music expression, like feeling like if you don't feel it, then it isn't real, which is now also not a good way to live. You know what I'm saying? So I think trying to balance that out as an adult when you're talking about like the to wrap back onto what you were saying, like I think there's like a choice, not just intention, but there's an obedience, a follow through, whether you feel it or not, and I think that's something not that our generation has a problem with, that everybody has a problem with if they're not feeling it. Um, I think that it's a lot of little actions stacked up on each other. So I'm feeling the repercussions of not doing that, of riding the fumes of faith decisions I made when I was 16 or 19 or 22 and kind of trying to live off of that high as if I like climbed a Mount Everest and can look back on that and look at the pictures and go back there and like I don't think that's the relationship the Lord's looking for. At least this is where I'm at with it. I'm just so when I've recognized that those people that weren't doing it the right way were that any adult right now that can set aside that much income and time in their week to be there is obviously interested in being selfless. So giving them some new, skin to that, where it's not just if you're feeling it that, some ways to obey that. But then we get lost in that obedience piece. I beat myself up a lot when I commit to like some kind of new discipline and then I'm 3 days in and I can't do it. And then I'm like, okay, maybe next year.
I know the feeling on that, dude.
Yeah.
I actually really love what you're saying. And I think one of the things that you hit on that I want to dive into a little bit more is the concept of commitment, right? Because there was this feeling for me growing up that we had to, like, that your commitment to your local church was of the utmost importance, to the point where, it was drilled into my head so much that by the time I was in even high school and my dad was so busy, my dad is self-employed,
Mhm.
and he takes work when he can get it. And you have sometimes slow months, sometimes busy months. And when he first, like, he'd gone through different transitions of self-employment. He worked with people in his family, and then he ended up working just kind of completely by himself. And when he would get a bunch of work and it was difficult for him to find the time to fit in church, I remember I really actually remember the first time my dad didn't go to church. Like, that's
Mm,
how much it was drilled into my head that you had to be there every Sunday. Cause I would go to my friends' houses on like a Saturday night and want to sleep over. And I would call my mom and be like, "Hey, can I stay over?" And she's like, "You need to come to church. Yeah, but you have to get up and come to church on Sunday."
yeah.
And then the first time my dad didn't make it to church, I was like, "Oh
Mm,
my God, is this thing falling apart?" And so what you're saying when you say like there's something that to be said for being there, to being involved even when it's inconvenient. And they might have internalized that in a way where it's like that there's maybe some fear and obligation that
Right.
is overly intense,
It's
but
cloudy.
you're
Yeah.
right about that. You're right about like most people aren't doing that. Most people are like, I'll do what's good for me when I want to do it. If I want to go, cool. If I don't, maybe I'll never go again. But there is
There's
something to be
something
said for that.
about, yeah, to be said about adults that consistently step in and up out of themselves and want to help other people. I mean, that you can work with that. People are so flaky, especially now. We have every permission to be. I mean, I don't, yeah, because now we've given each other a lot of permission. I feel like to not be committed,
I
to
think you're
really
right about that.
customize. And I do have a moral problem with customization because it just kind of deflects the sacrifice piece. It deflects, giving when it's comfortable. Like, these pieces now that we have where I just don't, I think it should look a little different. I'm not saying we go backwards. I'm just saying, yeah, I don't know where you guys are at with as far as living comfortably versus, I think at my church, one thing I always push is this illusion of safety, like as far as being covered with insurance, and I've got the job and I've got, debt free and these different corners covered as if you're responsible, kind of a disillusionment and then when tragedy hits, just no real armor to handle, like emotional safety there. I don't know. I'm getting on a tangent.
No, I think I feel like you're hitting on a lot of things that come up. There's a lot of oxymorons almost within church because I mean, as soon as you mentioned financial security, I thought of Dave Ramsey. Did you guys do Dave Ramsey stuff?
I came up and I never had the discipline to do it.
Yeah.
I think I could meet him in the middle, maybe. He's a nut, but I've told myself I'm bad at money long enough. I need to grow up a little bit.
But there's like that within like churches like gravitate towards his message, right? But then I remember constantly being like,
some kind of freedom there, right?
You gotta be smart and you gotta be fiscally responsible. So then you can do things for other people, maybe. But then there's also this idea of like you worship a homeless guy that lived on the goodwill of others. And trying to reconcile that with a Dave Ramsey message is not really possible. You have to live in a sort of dissonance, right? There has to be some sort of cognitive dissonance there to be able to say it's important to set up financial security, but also make that jive with a guy who tells you to like pick up your cross and follow him, right? It doesn't really work out the way you want
I
to.
guess. What does that mean though? I mean, like, what do you expect people to do?
Yeah.
In that situation? I mean, I don't know. That's where I know, like, my dad being a deacon and stuff and just hearing, like, the behind the scenes on the meetings and stuff that they had and everything, like, it always bothered me. Like, talking about commitment. Like, my church was very committed to missions. And they would give every cent of the church budget to missions if that's what they were able to do, Meanwhile, like, we had no commitment to the local community. And ultimately, like, I think that's how all of this stuff works, whether you're talking about church or government or just general charity and stuff, is like, you gotta concentrate on the people that are around you within arm's length, because, I mean, I saw it with my church for years where it was just like checks going overseas all the time. Like, every cent of the church budget that wasn't used for building maintenance or trying to keep the school open or whatever, it was like just off like a paper airplane thrown over the ocean. And
that's a great analogy.
Like, what do you show for it? And I also like started to realize
Casey,
that.
Come on, you'll see. Well, you won't because you're going to hell.
Map, dude. It's very cool. It's that and the pro-life movement, I'm not trying to get that juicy, but like, it's easy to defend things you can't see, easy to defend and step in and donate to things you don't even have to actually get your hands dirty with. And
absolutely,
I had, this isn't my analogy, but a college professor of mine at Friends, Jim Smith, man, he took his keychain out and like, I wish I had him on me and for the audio, but like jangled it and jangled. He's like, these are the people you're responsible for. Like, stop, getting so flustered and stressed out about everything in the whole wide world. These people that let you in these doors are who you're responsible for. And some of us have keys to big buildings, and that's a big responsibility to think of. And I think certain freedoms go away when you're in charge of that many things. I think, but we all have our house key and just a few things. I mean, those are your people. And I think we've got a whole generation of, I'm not trying to be that salty for real, guys, but just of pastors that are speaking to this big audience, like to the camera and like to the back of the room when there's like 50, 60 people in the room that they don't know, that have been there for years, and I think it was John Maxwell. He was like, a shepherd should smell like sheep and should know his people. I think we have more of a platform distance type outreach going on from everybody right now, and it's painful. We're lacking that. People don't need all that. They need a pastor. They need a shepherd. They need somebody that knows them and is close. And I've just seen that here at our local church in Wichita. But yeah, you guys got me rambling. You guys,
No,
we like
it's
to
like
bring the best out of people.
the thing that's not the thing that I started to notice with that over the years was that missions and missions has the same sort of appeal to the guy sitting in the pew that like the pro-life issue has to a dude in the ballot box. It's
yeah,
like, what's great about missions is you write the check and you put it in the envelope and you pat yourself on the back, and it didn't cost you any time, and you didn't have to put any sweat equity into that giving that you made. Like, you just mail a check and it's done. And then they say, hey, we're looking for volunteers to go do some upkeep on this old person's house in the congregation. Can anybody volunteer? And you're like, I'm more of a missions giving sort of person. And that's part of why pro-life stuff is so convenient and so popular, I think, with everyone, is that like, it's easy to care about unborn people because you just have to rant and vote the right way. Like, you don't have to be responsible for them once they're out. You like the consequences of someone who really wasn't ready for a kid, like having that kid, you don't have anything to do with those at that point, because then it's personal responsibility. And yeah, getting kind of spicy. But
personal responsibility is the mantra of the party in which you're referring to, though.
true.
Right. Well, that's the whole thing, is like, I shouldn't have to take care of your family, and I shouldn't have to, pay for your birth control and stuff like that. And it's like, well, okay, but you're also taking away the options for people who aren't ready for that responsibility. Well, you shouldn't have had sex then. That's how it is.
That choice. That's what I used to hear. I'm pro-choice. Pro don't have sex. That's when you made your choice. It's like, wow. I mean,
tell that the
people
person
didn't
telling
have
you
an
that
opportunity to have sex that are pro-life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
I remember
Sorry,
being
no one wants to
so
sleep with you.
pro-life in high school because I nobody tempted me with losing my virginity, so that was an easy thing to claim.
Yeah, same.
It's like, I'm straight edge because nobody ever offered me drugs or alcohol.
Right.
I was.
Easy to wonder how could you if never had the opportunity pass through. I mean it, and then as soon as we all did, we all failed hard. So it's interesting that dude, me, I've gone through a divorce. That's a word that wasn't even an option growing up.
Oh yeah.
That was a controversial one because it happened.
It did happen, and you know what they're called? A broken family.
You're broken.
You're broken.
Really thought about the gravity of that term.
Yeah, really? What if there's rebirth? What if they're renewed? What if there's, some kind of, we've tried to reinterpret the dialogue, but honestly, there's no language for it in my family tree. So trying to figure out these terms, like, I thought child support meant the dude is a deadbeat and isn't showing up. You know what? I split time with my son with his mom And because there has to be a primary residence, I mean, our time is like 55, 45%. You know, with me at the 45, I pay child support. And that's just the reality of how the system works. And I've had to swallow that pill and be like, this is what I thought it means to pay child support. This is what I thought it means to have dad and the stepdad show up at the game. But like trying to make it work, trying to find that new language for that has been powerful for me, man, for forgiveness and for grace and for redemption. I mean, I asked God, like, why did we go through this divorce? And then I look at my son, I'm like, what a great gift. What a great, outcome of, well, at least we have him, otherwise I'd be really confused why we went through that. But we sit there at soccer games and it's awkward, but finding that new dialogue that my family did not give us, where it would have been shattering. I don't know what would have happened. It's not an option. I mean, I don't know what that was like around you guys, but
Yeah. Actually, I want to. So I want to close a couple loops, and then I want to actually get back to your story, because hearing about your divorce, I want to spend some time focusing on your faith and your transitions, and because you talked about going out on the road, and that's when you started feeling like you got a new perspective on things, and you've obviously gone through difficult things, especially when divorce is difficult no matter what. Never mind having that Christian element tied to it, and then trying to figure out where you stand. And you've also mentioned still participating in a church. So
yeah.
there's a lot going on with your life, and I really want to get into it. And um, one of the things I wanted to touch on right before we jump to that was to the previous conversation. And I feel like there was three things at play that we were kind of like tossing out. And I want to just take a quick second of time together, if nobody cares, because it's going to bother me if I don't. And we're talking, it just will. I'll be like, after we end this, I'll be like, I never closed that out the way I wanted to.
This is a lot of pretext.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. But anyway, so when you're talking about throwing money overseas, and I had mentioned Dave Ramsey, and we had talked about that dissonance between like your Dave Ramsey set yourself up for the future, and then the mixed message you get in the church, right? On a Sunday morning, this is what Jesus would do. Jesus told this person to sell their money. They'll tell you that story of, I forget what story it is, about the guy who like had no money and just prayed, and then a wagon full of milk broke down outside of his little orphanage and everyone was fed. Like there's always those stories of people who gave their last dollar, no matter what, they tithed. So you have those like messages of like, always give your bottom dollar. And then you go in on Wednesday night for the Dave Ramsey class about how to get out of credit card debt and set yourself up for a fortune in the
Yeah,
future.
that's interesting.
So I love that. And then when you're talking about like missions, but you're talking about, and this is what I kind of want to tie into like where you're at now is, that story of the guy shaking his keys, right? And like,
Yeah.
this is what you're responsible for. Like, we only can be responsible for so much within a certain sphere of our lives. And, obviously for people who have more, they might be able to be responsible for more. But when you're looking at that scenario, but it's funny because another one of the Christian messages we got was there's like this anti-globalization, right? They don't like the idea of globalization. It's scary. It's new world. It's drifting into a new world order. But at the same time, like Casey said, we'll throw checks overseas all day long to say that we did something good for the gospel. While there was a time in history where you didn't have a TV to worry about what was going on across the country, and you didn't know about that Christian who was jailed in China for reading his Bible, or like there's a lot you didn't know, and our human brains are only able to know so much. And that's another mixed message, is like that let's focus on missions, but then we can only take care of what's going on in our own backyard, and then our brains are only equipped to handle so much. And then so when you talk about that responsibility for what you have in your own area, and how that looks. So I want to get into that with you. So you're part of the church. You're a pastor's kid. You end up going to you do public school, you go to a university for a little bit. Remind me again, the college you went to, was it a Christian college?
Yeah, Friends University. It's Quaker in its roots, but more
Okay.
liberal arts. I went there to play football.
Oh, really?
How weird is that? Yeah.
Do you still throw a pigskin over those mountains
Well,
over
and
there?
this girl I was dating at the time, I was a freshman at college. She was senior in high school, so she was going to go to that school too. So I had to stay in town.
Oh, yeah. I hear you.
I
What
was
was Tabor University? Is that
yeah, Tabor's in Hillsborough. Yeah,
that Mennonite?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay,
All the quiet folk.
we got all the hits.
All the quiet folk. So you did you graduate from there, or did you end up? Okay.
Graduated from there with a degree in like religion and philosophy, like a very general degree. Not one denomination. Like one of my professors was a Methodist pastor, one was a Baptist preacher, one was like a Greek Orthodox, one was Assembly of God, way out there guy. One was just a straight up just hippie. I don't know. So there was all kinds of perspectives. Rich Mullins went to
That's cool.
that
Oh,
school.
okay. Yeah. Hell yeah, dude.
Awesome guy. Yeah, that's kind of where some of his stories from. And
so you got a mixed message. So that was probably your first introduction to
there's some new
within Christianity, the varying traditions.
And Donald Miller and Rob Bell, and these are this is the first year I heard all these guys. And
oh yeah,
just a different perspective. But then the road, and then honestly, we haven't even talked about this part yet. When I moved back home to Wichita, when I had a son, I worked mental health with teens at Prairie View in Newton and at a boys ranch called Ken Lock Price Youth Horizons Boys Ranch in Valley Center here. They're both in Kansas, and just kids that are in crisis mode and in the system, and next stop is jail and self-harm and all kinds of stuff. So just again, when you're exposed to like some of these issues, some of this liberal nonsense starts to make more sense. I think there's a lot of context to what people are going through. And it really softened my heart for, it really set me up good for my own situation, and just some, finding some encouragement and hope for those kids helped me find mine. It was a very interesting place to be in that time in life of like recovery in my own way while I'm with these kids that are dealing with that. So I'm back. I don't work on that. I book for a couple music venues downtown and have started more of a culture and this my city, just trying to invest in the that's kind of my parish. But then I am in the church. Like you said, I'm still involved in the local church. And the short story is got a divorce and moved back in with my parents, lived in the basement.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah,
to
do it.
Set the timeline straight. So you mentioned having a kid. You mentioned having a divorce. What's this timeline between going?
Yes.
You leave college. Do you get married? Is a
left
person you were married
college.
to?
Left college in 2008.
Okay.
And was on the road until 2013 full time. Was living in Nashville 2013 to 2015. Got married during that time. And then we went through a separation, moved back to Kansas. Then we had our child in 2016. And then we split, like divorced before he was even one. So in 2017 we split, and they still live here. She's a teacher, great mom. We've got a good thing going on. It just didn't work out. And so the chasing down music again, was working mental health jobs for a while, and now everything I do touches music again, doing booking stages in Wichita, and then helping out with music at my church. Like I was saying, my mom's church, just the worship leader left, and I felt like a jerk if I didn't help out. And so was filling in for a while, and, never thought I would do music at a church. Did not think that would be a fit for a guy like me. Just my background and just personality. And I didn't want to do worship songs, and just trying to be obedient to the stuff in front of me, and a great, community and family around me. Being a single dad, being a part of the local church has been amazing, man. And
Really?
yeah, and so many resources, and not just that, there's so many ways for me to serve and get up out of myself, like I was saying, and bringing up this younger musicians and young band, and something I'm really passionate about. You know, I'm getting older, so like bringing up the next wave of musicians in the local scene and in the church. Um, worship's important. I think being so defensive of what that emotional manipulation looked like in church before, and now
Sure.
being able to be a part of that and not manipulate and not abuse that and just be has been really, you know, healing for me, and I think has ministered to other people too. So yeah, man, I'm in a good spot with it. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure some of the guys you have on here are a little saltier, but have come back around to the sweeter
No, I mean, yeah, some of them are.
It could be a bit.
I think that's dope, man. I mean, what we like to do here is we don't. It sounds flippant to say we don't care where people end up, but like that's not a concern of ours.
Right. It's the journey, right? Not the
Yeah.
destiny. Yeah, yeah.
So like where people end up in spite of, because everyone ends up in so many different places and everyone's story is unique in a certain way. And but what I've found with most of our guests, maybe there's one or two that maybe haven't, but most of them have like gone on like their journey and had these faith shifts. And if they've come back to it, it looks different than it did when they were, it
Yeah.
looks different than what was given to them when they were a child. And, or maybe they've come back to something that's very similar and they just have fresh eyes for it. I don't know. Like we've talked to so many people with varying experiences. I think the journey is what's interesting to us because we understand the impact that our upbringing had on us. Like there's a through line for every single person who grew up in the evangelical church and they turn out different ways. But it's interesting to us how it hits people and affects people and what trajectory it puts them on. So, I myself am like, I still participate in the Christian faith and I'm part of a church. So like, I resonate with people like you. I probably would have a hard time finding myself in certain types of church settings. But one of the things that I'm hearing you say that I think is really interesting is that as someone who's made music their life, their career in various avenues, who you're now back in a place where it's important to you because we all grew up in youth group. The amount of kids who were thirsty for music, who wanted to connect through music, who worship music was their only avenue for it. If they don't have people with a good head on their shoulders to like guide them through that or show them good music or let them know that
show them the newest Pillar album.
Yeah. Let them know that just doing music is good enough. Like you don't even have to do worship music. You can just care about your instrument.
Yeah.
Like whatever it is, there's so many ways in which someone who's had the experience you have can turn that around for kids. And if people like you are gone from the church completely, you're just going to get that next worship pastor that tells somebody that they have to do worship music if they're going to do music. And I think what you're saying is dope, man.
So what do they? Yeah, what do people want? That's what I'm interested in. People that are disillusioned is like, you want us all to go, like leave. Like to me, it's like it's even like a city like Wichita where we build something cool up, and then people leave. They go to another place. But I feel like the church is dealing with that. Where like the people that are smart now, it's like cool. You figured out some stuff. Yeah, we did some stuff wrong. Come on back. Y'all are talented. Find a way to plug in, and not because it's about the church does a bad job of taking advantage of people and not paying them for their graphic design work and not paying them for their playing and not paying, if there is money, but all it is communication and some vision. You guys get me going on all kinds of things. I think, man, a lot of what you're saying about just getting back into church and being disillusioned with it in general, I think it just has to do with individual actions, right? I mean, it comes back to really specific things that people said that just aren't true. I think there's a lot of a lot more people on the same page. We're not as fragmented as we think. I mean, it's much like what's going on right in front of us. I think it exposed our whole system of exchange. I don't. Yeah.
We talked a lot about like the varying things that pull people into it and keep them there. And like my church and the group of people that I grew up around, it was like very much centered around like doctrine and knowing what's right and being right about things and knowing with 100% certainty that this is what it's supposed to be and this is how God intended and everything. And then you've got other churches that are maybe not so hardline on the doctrine, but they have this great like community aspect to them.
Family.
And yeah, and like that was something that my church, I mean, I had a good community of people in my like age range, but I look back on it to like where my parents were at when we were growing up, and there's like not that many people there that they could relate to, and the ones that were their age and similar stages of life and everything, they weren't really doing anything, and so I think that was something that they always struggle with, is like there's just no one here for us. It's like obligation, to keep coming here, and we think this is right, but that's the only thing like really holding us in this place.
That we're
And
right.
so like exactly. And so like when I was growing up, like the doctrine part started to fall apart for me after college, and there was no community to keep me involved, and that's not their fault, that's my fault to some extent. But for me, when the doctrinal side of it kind of fell out from under me, like it was like pulling the bottom brick out of the wall, and it was it. Like there was just nothing for me there. I had no emotional connection to it, no friends that were keeping me there. So like I just kind of left. And
Peace. Yeah.
that's I think that's a mistake. And that's another commitment aspect of that whole thing, is like caring for the people around you, caring for your local community and the community of the church itself, is like investing in people that are next to you in the pew. And like it's really easy to put an envelope in the plate as it goes by and say all the hey, good to see you, brothers, and then just walk out the door and be done with it
Yeah.
until the next week. And I think it's an easy routine to fall into, but like that's ultimately like why I think it didn't strike a chord for a lot of people, or eventually it just sort of gave out on them. Like, I mean,
What
it's
about when
me.
it does go bad? Like, yeah, no groundwork for that. I'm with you, man. It was all fundamental, but then I'd be around situations that were all emotional. To find that balance. I don't know.
So, were you a Christian rock kid?
I mean, I was pretty sheltered. I didn't even find tooth and nail till I was like in college, like under oath until I was like already in college. Yeah.
Oh,
I
no
think
way.
somebody gave me an Emery CD like my freshman year of college and heard that. Yeah.
Okay. That
The
was not
opening track on that one CD was like everybody's intro.
Wolf.
And then when
They'll never not play that at any show ever. I bet they're so sick of that song.
no, they close every show with it. When Devin stepped down from that band, one of the singers, I got to be in that band for a couple of years.
Oh, no
Really?
shit.
2015 and 16, and it was full circle weirdness, man. Like being that same kid that was in the front row reaching up. Now I'm on stage reaching down. Like it was, but I was just filling in. I mean, but it was fun. Yeah, it was a good time.
So
How
you had a Christian metal stage.
Oh, for sure, man. I'm a hardcore kid at heart, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, yeah, we've talked about it a bunch of times, but like I have the musical taste of like a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
Just never pulling out of there. Just gonna be
Hey there.
listening to the latest like deathcore band until I'm dead.
Right. They need fans.
It's fun. I took this I drifted hard out of heavy music for a while, a number of years, and got really big into a lot of like rap and hip hop. And I mean, probably 5, 6, 7 years was
That's cool.
mostly what I was into. And for the past couple of years, I have found myself drifting back into just heavy shit.
They're
in
similar, dude.
there is a lot of similarities in the way that you like
They
in
both
the way that the
stun.
beat flows and shit. Yeah.
Yeah. The
Which
mix
is
up.
why when they did Punk Goes Crunk, it worked
Yeah.
well. Like the scream patterns and
Yeah.
the rap cadence isn't
Yeah.
all that dissimilar.
You're so right, though.
But
Oh.
I'm like into bands that I never cared about before. Like everyone's been into them for so long. I shit on them for a long time. Did not give a
I'm
fuck.
worried
But
about what you're gonna say.
so let's see. Let's see how this plays out. Knocked Loose.
No, oh, frick, yes.
Yeah.
They're just here.
It's awesome. The video's dope too, dude. That dude scream. I feel like I'm gonna throw up if I mimic like one verse of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude.
The first couple times I heard him, I was like, this shit's not for me. I don't like this, like, just heavy. I was out of it at the time, and something changed in me, man. Maybe I got saved because I'm like, my friend sent me the, like, just talked about their new, he wasn't a Knocked Loose guy either. And then he's like, oh, this new EP is fucking fire.
Dude, Knocked Loose, Loathe. I don't know if you know Loathe.
Mm-hmm.
I let it in and it took everything. It's a full length, dude. They're a London.
Check it out because I'm looking for more stuff.
Amazing. And then the new Every Time I Die is hard, dude. It goes hard.
I haven't listened to that yet.
Yeah.
A friend of mine just mentioned Every Time I Die because he mentioned there's similarities between Knocked Loose.
Well,
I missed the boat on that.
I can't stop listening to that, dude.
Evergreen Terrace?
No, Turnstile.
Oh, why did I think you just said
Terrace
Evergreen?
Is still a band?
I don't know. I honestly heard Evergreen Terrace, so I'm losing my mind.
And you heard what you wanted to hear.
That was like the second metal album I ever got, or whatever, metalcore. I got what was it? Haste the Day. What was their big When Everything Falls?
Yeah.
And then
dude, they play like seriously, like a floor show. Yeah.
That was a fun band to see. That was like the first metal show I ever went to was Haste the Day. And then the second album I got was Sincerity is an Easy Disguise in This Business by Evergreen Terrace.
Yeah.
And solid stuff.
Solid stuff. New label, solid stuff.
Yeah, solid stuff.
We played. I was in a band called Abandoned Kansas for a long time, and we played we used to play with Haste the Day a lot, and not similar at all. But they were just friends, and but we got to play their bass player Mike, who was in the band the whole time. He was like one of the few guys that was in the band that whole time, and we played his wedding. Man, we went up to Indiana and played the wedding, and yeah, it was good. Those are good boys, man. That's an awesome band.
Yeah.
Legends.
It was sweet how they came back like years later and made that album with like a bunch of the different members.
Yes, it's a great record too.
I actually don't think I ever listened to that.
No.
There's a couple songs
I'm writing
with
everything
Jimmy
down we're talking about so I can go ahead and
find
stuff to listen to.
Yeah, you're going to have new notes.
Man, okay, so you probably got to tour with some of those bands then, I would imagine. Who's like the coolest? Love to hang out with them, love to play with them, excited to go on tour with them.
Dang, I got to go way back. We did a tour. My band put out a record in 2011, and The Wedding and Showbread opened.
Okay. Oh, The Wedding, dude. I forgot about them.
From Indian Lakes, who's a great band. Like, they're crushing it now. And then, who was the other band? Mike Maines and the Branches. They were all on that tour. That was a great run. All those bands. Dude, our little, like, fun, anecdote, because, dude, 21 Pilots played with us.
Oh, no way.
Shows in Ohio when they were still just a 3 and 4 piece band. Those are great guys. I mean, we had traveled a lot with House of Heroes, and Josh Dunn, who's in 21 Pilots, had played drums in House of Heroes for a while, and I just befriended him. And man, those guys are like one of the biggest bands in the world.
Yeah, they're enormous now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's one of those bands that you find people who are like acolytes of 21 Pilots, that like know all the backstories to every song, know all the lyrics and stuff. Like I've got a friend that's just head over heels into them.
They came to our own arena here in Wichita, and it didn't matter deep track or hit. The whole arena knew every lyric to every song. It was wild to see that. They never even been here before.
That's
No,
awesome.
I'm trying to think of other band experiences. Yeah, a lot of good. And a lot of good, like I was saying before, like a lot of my peers are either crushing it right now or done. So us guys that are still hanging on for dear life, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Let's
Dude, Wichita is funny because like I've been to some shows here
Mhm.
since I moved here, and a lot of them have been great. It's like you get a limited amount of bands that come through. So when they do come through, it's like everybody's there and they're making the most of it.
Did you
It kind of
go
reminds
to
me of Lynchburg when we
Lynchburg?
were there.
Nice.
Yeah, that's where Sam and I met was at Liberty.
yeah.
What Wichita shows?
Oh man, I went to one a couple years ago before COVID, of course, but Norma Jean came through and played Rock Island Live.
Helen, that's a tiny place, man.
It was such a fun show,
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
like
I booked the
Gideon was there.
street. Yeah.
There was a couple. I forget who else was on that show, but it was really fun. Um, Went to one that wasn't necessarily like a metal show, but 12-Foot Ninja played at the Cotillion, and I forget
Yeah.
who they were with.
What does
So much fun.
ninja sound like? Is that a DJ or something?
They're a very strange Australian like
It's not good.
hard
Casey
rock
likes
band.
it. It's not good.
Sam hates it. But
Good.
see, Sam doesn't like a lot of new things.
No. Are they new? Are they new? I don't like a lot of bad things. I would definitely say that, and I'm
Yeah.
not into.
For on paper having similar musical tastes, he takes a lot of dumps on bands that I send him.
Oh yeah, because you like weird shit sometimes. Because they go for like to me, it's like one of those. It's just a gimmicky band. I can't. As soon as I feel like a band is doing like a gimmick or having a shtick, I'm like, I'm out so fast. I think it's, but even just the vibe of the music, I'm out. It's not for me.
It's weird. I'll give you that. It's weird. But you like oh god, what's the one that we both been listening to?
Sleep Token.
Sleep Token.
Yeah,
It's a
Nice.
little gimmicky.
he's got a gimmick going on. He does, but
He does.
that band fucks. So I'm
Is that still a saying? Dang, I gotta catch up.
I don't know. It probably isn't. I probably should stop saying that.
Keep it alive.
All right, let's talk about. So obviously you've been on tour, you've done all the music things. I want to talk about like your musical experiences, your tour. Like it's hearing, like knowing what you're doing now. So you're doing, you got a band called Glass Age, and then another one that I was
Crusoe, yeah.
Crusoe is what I was introduced, like how I started talking to you was through your Crusoe page. But those bands aren't like the ones that we've been talking about. So like, when did you start like really playing music? When did you hit the road? What kind of music were you into? What kind of band were you in? Like, and how did you, I want to map the trajectory from how you started there and got to what you're doing now, because I think from what I've listened to, I've checked out Crusoe, I've checked out Glass Age. I'm digging it, man. That's why I wanted to have you on. Like, I don't know anything about you, but I hear your music and I think this shit's good. And it made me want to have a conversation with you. So I want to kind of map your musical journey.
So yeah, like you said, Glass Age is the new thing. Crusoe is a film and TV project that I'm doing with an artist named Zaid Wolf. He has like, you can't watch a field goal kick or like a penalty kick or like a go to timeout without hearing one of his songs in a bumper. He just crushes that like stadium sports music, the new Jock Jam. But I make Crusoe music with him for like TV and film specifically. It's like a outlet for that. So Glass Age is more the artistic outlet. The band that I cut my teeth on and grew up in front of people with, and like went from shitty local band to label band, was called A Band in Kansas. 2 words, like kind of like a band.
Oh, Abandoned Camp. Oh, holy shit, dude!
Yeah,
I'm definitely familiar with that band name.
Me too.
I didn't even realize that's just fun.
So we at Friends University, we had some songs, and then did the last semester of college, like the spring of 2008 online, and went ahead and were on the road. We were on the road we played Cornerstone 2007, 2008. Like we were doing youth groups and bars. Some nights we do youth group and a bar, depending, like we do the colleges, the Christian festivals, the city market, we were doing every DIY touring from like 2007, 2008. Then we signed a record deal with Goatee Records, Toby Mac's record label
Okay.
out of Nashville. It had Reliant K and House of Heroes and I Am Terrified and Family Force 5 at the time. And then it kind of split from there. We never did a tour with Reliant K. We did a lot of tours with House of Heroes. We put out an EP in 2009, a full length in 2011, another EP in 2013, and then they had us doing some Christian bullshit. Like, we could not make a career out of it, so we tried to co-write and make a Christian hit, and it couldn't have gone worse.
Huh.
Like, to zoom in on that moment, like, they replaced our drums and guitars and everything and they just took the balls off of it, basically. Like, I'm on an acoustic tour trying to raise money for some other stuff and like solo, and I'm like with a peer of mine that I respect. I'm like, you want to hear the mix? Do you mind? Listen to your own stuff. And then it comes on and it's acoustic guitar, and I'm like, we didn't play acoustic in the studio. So they just replaced all this stuff, put out
That's
this
awful.
put out this Christian radio hit anyway. And what's worse is it didn't even work. At least if it would have worked and we could have, so our fan base is like, what are you doing? The actual market said, we don't like it. So then we got kind of left in the middle. We left our record deal, put out a few songs, and they're still our best 3 songs, like plays wise, because it's also the age of Spotify. 2013, we put out a few songs, did okay with those. And then in 2015, I put out a full length on Bad Christian, Emery's label. After I
Oh,
had
no way.
filmed them, they released the full length for the last record for that band. We did like a 6-month or 6-week acoustic tour, kind of nationwide to support that album. A lot of people that had given to the crowdfund had like bid for a house show. So we were fulfilling all that. And then that band dissolved. So that was 2015. Moved back
Okay.
to Wichita, and
Was that around the time that 2015? Yeah,
So
that sounds like around the time that you were was that around the time you were kind of going through your separation? Your kid was on the way?
I was going out with Emery. I was on the living room tour. I moved my family to Nashville, which was a bad move. I moved my wife, newly married, took her away and then I left, and so it just broke that connection.
Yeah.
It just, and so we moved back together in end of 2015. So, and then we had our child in 2016. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Dude, that dynamic of like having like I traveled for my company for 3 years when we first moved here. So we moved from Michigan to Kansas, set up shop. We were going to build a house, so we lived in a rental house. Actually, you probably know where it is. You know where 81 Speedway's at?
Yeah.
You know that stone house across the street?
What?
We lived in there for a year.
That's like
Definitely haunted.
Yeah.
Definitely leaky basement. But we moved in there while we built our house, and for 3 years, like I traveled 2 to 3 weeks a month, and
Man.
my wife was here by herself, and it was tough, man. I mean, it was never like it wasn't tough on our connection, but it was really tough for her personally, like just to know that like you're headed out again on Sunday and gonna be alone again for another 5-6 days.
I'll be honest, it was tough for me on a lot of levels. She was resentful that I moved her, that I was out doing music, out having fun. I was getting a ton of attention, a ton of, approval from all my peers. I mean, it really put the rocks on us, man.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
I was like, why am I talking to you, making time, protecting this phone call? And I've got people here that want to be like male or female. I got people that want me to do me, and you don't want me to do me. It was a lot of, anyways. I feel that though. The distance either way is hard. We had an extra resentment factor there, but
yeah, that's a lot, man. I mean, and you're young, you're trying to figure it out. Like, everyone's trying to live their dream, and it's like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, there's so many factors going on. It's like, I don't want to be a bad person and say, I don't want you to do it. So then you do it, but then that causes problems. It's like,
Right.
and then that's what's interesting about, like, I guess even taking it back to the evangelical church, right, that we grew up in. It's like, there's this like, absolutely not, no, it's like, no divorce. You can't, if you get a divorce, it's because you're not trusting God, and somebody's wrong. Somebody's doing something wrong. And if look, say you were the one doing something wrong, well, your wife is now the one doing something wrong by not sticking by you no matter what, because that's what Christ would do for the church. And like all that like strong language, dude. And then you get to a point where it's like, or two young people fell in love, got married, went in different directions, shit hit the fan, and you called it quits before you raise a kid in turmoil. Like this, like, but that's something that doesn't really compute with
Two young people were scared their dry humps would become a wet hump, and so they had to get married.
Heavy petting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. There was some. It was always awkward when the church had to handle those situations, because, like, my church was very much the Bible is to be interpreted literally exactly as it says. There's no gray areas. There's no contradictions.
The words.
Exactly. And if you're confused, find somebody who took a semester of Greek, and he can tell you the 3 definitions for that word that might mean something else. And then we get to pick the one that makes the most sense for what we already think.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like I would have a hard time in church now, because the minute somebody was like, I wanted to talk a little bit about the original Greek meaning of this word, I'd be like, I'm out! I'm done. But yeah, it was tough with divorce, because what the Bible lays out, like, a couple of scenarios in which divorce is like okay, but then there's rules on like who you can marry and what you can do after you've divorced, and it was always like, it's not realistic. It's not how anyone's situation works out.
We just didn't get the whole story clearly. So yeah, there's a lot of problematic pieces, I feel like, that we don't have script for right now. I mean, the trans issue, period, and divorce, and just America. I feel like
America's in the Bible. What are you talking about, dude? I don't know what you're talking about.
America is the Bible.
How not just to believe this is going to crumble at any point? I don't root for that instead of cheer for it. Cheer for the country. I don't know.
I know it feels like everything's going off the rails a little bit more now than even when we were.
The church's response to COVID was tough, man. It was hard. Even being in a church, it was hard to know the right thing to do. You got hate mail either way. I mean it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Every business. I mean,
so now it's hard to even trust. So El Dorado's closest town to me, and when you're driving through El Dorado from east to west, there's a big sign in the front of this yard. It's like an advertisement, basically, but it's got this scripture verse on there about like, be not afraid and trust in the Lord and stuff. And there's nothing explicitly about COVID on it, but every time you drive by it, you're like, I know what you're doing. Yeah. I know what you're doing. Why are you putting that out? Like, what are you trying to do? It's just, I don't know. It's like it's a taint on the community that's going to be hard to get rid of.
But putting up that billboard looks like a spirit of fear. Like, to me,
right?
Quoting the scripture, like,
I don't get the irony.
It's bizarre how dense some people are.
Yeah.
This is the generation that believed televangelists, right? I mean, it worked for a while. Mm-hmm. I mean, it. So, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just curious as whether or not you have any, like, if there's any difficulty, because you said sorry, is the church that you're in now the one that you started doing worship in because, like, when the worship pastor left?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's the most recent church experience I've had. Yeah. I've been there 2 years. Yeah.
And is that like a kind of somewhat typical evangelical church, or
I would say so. Yeah.
Is there any aspect of that that's hard for you to be in? Or are you just okay with like? If I'm being perfectly honest, my level of discomfort in that sphere is, and this is you could argue as a me issue. Like I would like it if I was in a place where I could be in a scenario like that and just be me and not be like a ball of anxiety.
Mhm.
I wouldn't still participate in it myself if I was looking for a faith community, but like it sounds like you've made so many faith shifts and that you're in a good spot, and that the maybe the evangelical church doesn't exactly line up with who you are or what you think, but you seem like you're doing okay there. Like, is there any part of you that has a hard time with that? Do you get to stuff roll off your back easy? Kind of where are you at as far as being in that setting?
It's a good question, man. Sometimes stuff rolls off my back. I know it's just like a trigger. It's just language that's the same from when I was young. It's not the same actions going on. I think people come back to the same tropes and say that. I even find myself saying some things where I'm like, why did I say that? Like,
Yes, I feel you on that, dude. I've been there.
yeah. And we're not because I don't believe it, but just like that's not the main thing I wanted to say. And that's how I wrapped it up. And um I think for me I just know better. Like I don't think my church is doing it right. I just know better than to be a curmudgeon and sit in the sideline. Like I just want to get my hands dirty and get involved in the same thing Gandhi said, right? The change I want to see in the church, the stuff I want to see. I don't want to sit back and be, if you need to leave your church, but find another one. Like the worst part is people that step out the whole program. I think overall the idea is good. I think the community involvement, and I think being exposed to other perspectives, I think it pushes me to consider even to be honest, my Facebook feed annoys me, right? But then to go and sit with some of these people that feel that way and know that I disagree with like 60% of what they're saying, but I don't have to 100% hate them, and I don't have to be rude to their
Mhm.
kids, and I don't have to like cut them off in conversation with my point, and I don't have to defend anything because it doesn't matter right then. In that space, we're trying to all focus on something outside of us. And yes, I think people misinterpret it, and confirmation bias is in the room and all these things, but I think you have a culture that a church that will let people coexist and be wrestling. And I know that me as a worship leader does more question asking than answer giving, and just make space. I think to touch on what I was talking about earlier, to grow up in a tradition that was no emotion, and then to lean too far into emotion, and then to reclaim some of that balance of like I do fully believe the Holy Spirit still speaks to us through the emotional plane, the unseen, the imaginative. I mean, faith comes from something we cannot see. So that's some imagination aspect to that. And maybe that gets kind of granola for some Christian people, but like, I think ushering people into that place doesn't have to be abusive. It can be powerful. I mean, I think it can be beneficial. I think people come to church looking for something. So I think give offering what the moment for what they came for, but not demanding it. Not demanding that exchange. The guy standing at the end of the aisle when we were kids with there's like 16 verses of I surrender all, and like if you don't go say something to him, then he's going to feel like an idiot. So somebody has to go quickly resurrender. Not that. I think just giving people space to consider something different is important. So, yeah, man, I don't where I'm at right now, I think God weeps with the people that are weeping. I think he mourns with people that are losing right now with painful situations. I think there's a bad, connotation of some kind of victorious, vengeful leader that's not Donald Trump, So just trying to undo some of that. I don't want to back off totally. I want to be there. I want to, I don't. I want to take the mic. Like, why don't us guys go take the mic? Us guys that can do it and have heart for it and can sing, go take the mic instead of shying away from the church. Go take the mic. You know, I yeah, I don't. That's not my whole point of today, but it's kind of.
Go ahead, Casey. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. It just makes so much sense to me, and
Yeah.
I think to live in a place like Wichita, you know, and I'm not a churchgoer, but a lot of the people I know are, and the vast majority of people I know here are conservative. And so when you hear people talk about like cutting people out who don't think a certain way or have certain beliefs or something, like, you know, like the one that comes to mind is like, it's not enough to not be racist. You got to be anti-racist. And I get the sentiment there, and I think it's good. But getting confrontational with somebody because they don't have this like ideal view of that issue, if your goal is to elevate that person to a new place, you know, to where they understand the nuances of that conversation, and they understand that, you know, how to put themselves in other people's shoes and stuff, like getting confrontational with them doesn't work.
No.
Maybe you feel good, and maybe you get to demonstrate your position, and you get to really state loudly what you think about it, and
Drop the
that does
mic.
feel good, but it doesn't change people's minds. And I think that like you the best thing you can do is just to stay with that person and have a good conversation with them, and not be, you know, confrontational, but just show them like what the other side of the coin can look like, you know. And that's what changes hearts and minds over time, not the like, you know, fire and brimstone sermon. And yeah, I don't know, man. That's a tough thing nowadays, because I feel like it's like anything else. Things that don't cost someone anything are easy to take a hard stance on, right? We saw that all growing up through church. The guy who doesn't drink at all can take a really harsh stance on drinking and how horrible it is, and how no one would ever do that was serious about it, you know, their testimony and stuff. But the things that do cost him something, like, you know, you talked about like giving and you know, accumulating wealth and stuff, like, probably doesn't have such a harsh stance on that if he is a wealthy guy, you know. And I think the same thing goes with all of that. Like, if you don't have all these people in your life that don't line up with you ideologically, to tell someone to cut those people out is pretty easy for you. But, you know, for if you live here where 90% of the people you interact with on a daily basis are the type of person they're talking about, it's like, dude, I can't cut those people. Like, and I don't want to. I mean, there's a lot of great people that just don't completely line up with you ideologically, and you got to find a way to maintain a connection with them, and hopefully by doing that, you can move them towards a more, you know, compassionate view of things.
Yeah. No, well said.
Yeah, it makes me. I feel like it's kind of memey a little bit. Like there's a kind of person that gets choked on who takes the position of, I don't want to leave the church. I want to fix it from within, and then they have all these hills to die on and fix it from within. And what's interesting about what you're saying and what I'm hearing you say is, I think there's a version of that is only going to result in complete and total exhaustion, because those people are coming at it from an approach of like, it shifts it to a mission, right? My mission is to change the leadership, change the viewpoints, change everything, so that way from top down this becomes something that looks more like me. And I think what I'm hearing you say, and that sounds incredibly healthy, and it sounds I've really enjoyed hearing your perspective on it, is that you're just okay. Like you're just okay being, you know who you are. You've come to terms with who you are, and
Yeah.
you know who these people are. And you have a position to bring people into something, whether it's just music, maybe it's not even Christian. Maybe you're just providing a musical avenue for some of these kids who only have this outlet. That's their outlet. But maybe you get to talk to somebody. Maybe you can say, "Hey, that's really interesting, man. That's cool it's interesting that you think that way. I think a little bit differently, but here, we don't even have to get into it." Or maybe you present your opinion, or you don't, like this. But what I think is great about what you're saying is like, you're not even, it doesn't even sound like you're there for a mission that's going to burn you out. And I think that's what happens to people. Like,
Yeah.
there's an institutional aspect of evangelicalism that probably can't be fixed, but you're not trying to fix that. I'm hearing that you're trying to build relationships with people within it, and
Yeah.
that you can bridge certain gaps, and you have a voice. So I love it, man. I'm so glad we got to hear that perspective in
I
your
would think
in your
if
story
you
on that.
want to change the worship culture of your church, you were focused on relationships on your worship team. I mean, it's not about doing new songs or finding new lights or the LED screen. You know, it's something about the unity and singularity of people leading. You sense it when you go see a band. You know when they're on the same page and when they're bringing something, a message that's clear, and they're doing what they do best. They're not trying to reach for this. They're not trying to reach for that. They're doing what they do best. And I think, you know, I really do think there's a piece there. When you were talking, I I was thinking about how that sin of gluttony got ignored at my church.
At every church, especially Baptist.
Like they're literally wearing it. You know, these big old fupas, just like how, and nobody's talking about, and they're dying, and we're burying them, and we're like, we're gonna see that brother in heaven, you know, and nobody's talking about it. He's literally wearing his, you know, porn log on his stomach, you know, as far as inappropriate eating.
Yeah,
And
if that guy sucked a dick once, he would be in hell. But
yeah,
the sin of gluttony is fine.
oh my God. If he even thought about it, right? That's but I think the hierarchy of sins and just some of the jacked up stuff. I think what's interesting being in church now is you know, obliterating all of that and just being encouraging folks to step into themselves. I mean it. Yeah, that burnout thing's real, man. If you think you're going to save the whole world, I think it's investing in people around you, investing in your community. I think Jesus's model is great. I do believe in Jesus. I do think he does most of the work on his own. I think we're just supposed to do what we're best at. You know, as far as the Great Commission, you know, we've been talking about missions some, and when you're supposed to bring it up and tell people and sell and pitch the thing. But I mean, I really think you functioning as a healthy human being will always be like, how do you do that? You know, you know, so being not like he's some diet that you got to try, but just, you know, leaning into that and just doing what you do, not trying to package it in some kind of spin. I've been grateful to work with the church that's not trying to do that, you know, just trying to invest in people. And, you know, I think God does have a purpose for folks, so trying to help them meet that. I mean, I think that's important. Not get their ticket to heaven and wait and then tithe until then, but like connect people with their God-given purpose to serve and meet people. I mean, I'm passionate about that for sure.
That's awesome,
There
man.
was there was a Christian comedian that did an event that I went to at some point, and he had this whole bit about like how much harder it would be to like deal with gluttony if you gained weight in like your forehead instead of your belt line. His whole thing was like, I gotta get to the gym. I can't see a thing.
Can't read my Bible.
That's pretty funny, dude. I'll shit on Christian comics all day, but that's a solid bit.
He was a funny guy.
That's funny, man. So I love this. I really do appreciate your perspective, man. I before we kind of jump off here, I want to. I know, you know, we did talk about your experience in the music world, and then how that shifted when you moved, and now you've kind of got a couple of different projects going on. I don't know if you hit the road at all. I don't know what you kind of got going on with those projects specifically, but why don't we just kind of finish out with you plugging some of your stuff a little bit more instead of mentioning it in passing?
Yeah, man. People can check out the music, A Band in Kansas. We talked about that. It's 2 words. We have a cover band now that's 4 words, A Band in Kansas.
Okay.
Like 2000s, like Guitar Hero songs, but we leaned fully into the joke. and then
That's good.
Crusoe. But then the newest project I'm working on, Glass Age, making a new record, finishing it up in Nashville next month in November.
Is this a solo thing, or you got a band?
No, it's
with
a
you?
full band. Yeah, it's a full band, like alternative rock kind of stuff. Kind of, not far from what I was doing the band in Kansas. I always want to think it's something new, but it's hard to escape yourself. But I don't know if you're fans of like the Killers or Deftones or Death Cab, somewhere in that like emotional indie rock space. And making a new record with Jay Hall over in Nashville. Gonna get that out. Working on a crowdfund right now. Kind of doing like the independent route. We did that with the last record too, and just been the best way to kind of bypass the whole sluggish music biz and get the music right to the fans and go tour on it. But that's the newest project. Yeah, Glass Age. I'd be stoked if you guys checked it out. Got some new songs up.
Yeah. No, it's really good, man. I listened to it after I started connecting with you. I threw that on and I listened to what you had for a good few days. Put it on
That's
repeat,
awesome,
had it on in the background while I was working, trying to soak it in. It's really good. So everyone definitely should check it out. We'll link to where we'll figure all that out, but we'll link to wherever you're at. You got that on Instagram, Twitter, I don't know, wherever.
Yeah, Glass Age band on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok is where everybody's at. That's where we're supposed to be at right now, making funny TikToks. I can't dance.
That's awesome, man.
Appreciate you guys having me on here, man. I thought that was cool. We messaged and thanks to I guess Christian Nightmares for getting us hooked up.
Right. I know
That's
for
our
sure.
bud. We got we'll be with Christian Nightmares again pretty soon here, so keep an eye open for that.
Yep. All
All
right,
right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.